The Cimmerian cautiously lowered himself down on the inside and drew his sword, staring about him. He was shaken by the nervousness of the wildcat standing thus unprotected in the naked starlight, and he moved lightly around the curve of the wall, hugging its shadow until he was even with the shrubbery that he had noticed. He then ran quickly toward it, crouching low, and almost tripped over a form that lay crumpled near the edge of the bushes. A quick look to the right and left showed him no enemy in sight at least, and he bent close to investigate. His keen eyes, even in the dim starlight, showed him a strongly built man in the silvered armor and crested helmet of the Zamorian Royal Guard. A shield and spear lay near him, and it took only an instant's examination to show that he had been strangled. The barbarian glanced about uneasily. He knew that this man must be the guard he had heard pass his hiding place beside the wall. Only a short time had passed, yet in that interval, nameless hands had reached out of the dark and choked out the soldier's life. Straining his eyes in the gloom, he saw a hint of motion through the shrubs near the wall. Thither he glided, gripping his sword. He made no more noise than a panther stealing through the night, yet the man he was stalking heard. The Cimmerian had a dim glimpse of a huge bulk close to the wall and felt relief that it was at least human. Then the fellow wheeled quickly with a gasp that sounded like panic, made the first motion of a forward plunge, hands clutching, then recoiled as the Cimmerian's blade caught the starlight. For a tense instant, neither spoke, standing ready for anything. "You are no soldier," hissed the stranger at last. "You are a thief like myself." "And who are you?" asked the Cimmerian in a suspicious whisper. "Taurus of Numidia." On this episode of Starships and Steel, we're going to continue our series on the new Conan RPG by Modiphius. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone, to Starships and Steel. My opening little story there was from The Tower of the Elephant by Robert E. Howard. It's obviously part of the inspiration for part of the 1982 movie, as many of the scenes in the 82 movie are. Highly recommend it. Great little story. But we're not here to talk about that today. Today we're here to talk about the new Conan RPG. And today we're here to go over the basic mechanics of the game. How you get your characters to do things, what you're doing for dice, that sort of thing. I've also got a new beverage today, a new porter I've never tried before. This is called Thornless Blackberry Porter. It is a classic porter. It combines roasted dark and black malts with natural blackberries, Chinook, and Columbus hops, balanced the sweetness in this robust porter. So, looks like it's made in Penticton, British Columbia. I'll be there later this year. Maybe I can check out some more of their beers. Let's have some. It's a good start. My porter. I got my ill-gotten Kozel mug from the Czech Republic. There we go, a little bit too much head on there. Not the best beer pourer in the world, as all my friends will tell you. We'll let that settle out a bit before we start. Okay. So, I got my outline again. We'll go through that, give you guys an idea of this game. So we talked a little bit last time about why this system. This system is going to lend itself to exciting encounters that we might find in the pulp stories of the 1930s. So it's a good system. I like it. It's different than D&D. I'm not sure it's different just to be different, but it is different, so you won't feel like you're playing D&D apart from the fact that you're playing a role-playing game. Conan uses, for its entire system, D20s and something they call combat dice, which are D6s. Do you need other dice? No. Are they useful? Well, if you want to roll random numbers from 1 to 12, then a D12 is useful. So they are useful, they're just not part of the actual mechanics of the game. The basic mechanic is that it's a roll under system, and you're looking for numbers of successes to succeed in anything you're trying to do. The game works on successes working from 0, which are simple, in which case you need no successes, up to a maximum of 5, where you have 5 successes. So our basic stats in this game are agility, awareness, brawn, coordination, intelligence, personality, and willpower. And those stats will be numbers like 11, 9, 12, that kind of thing. In a basic concept, you'll be trying to roll underneath those numbers to get your success, or those numbers or lower, not just underneath. So if you have a score of 11 and that's your target number, you need to roll 11 or less. That's a success. We're going to skip forward from there and we'll come back to successes and succeeding and doing that kind of thing in a minute. The first thing I wanted to, oh look, it's time to try the beer. Cheers everyone. Smells good. A little bit, overall, pretty good taste. A little bit of that carbon dioxide acid taste in it, which I don't like as much. I like mine a little bit smoother than this. The Okanagan Springs Porter, and I tried a cherry porter, which I had it on channel, but I tried a cherry porter from Wild Rose here in Calgary, and it was awesome. This one's not bad. I will enjoy it. It's not perfect in my mind. Yeah, alright. So, in some role-playing games, and we'll compare this to Dungeons & Dragons as I go, because that's one most people are familiar with, and I'm more familiar with, even though I don't play it very much, or haven't played it in a long time. So that caveat, I'm playing Pathfinder for the first time ever. I haven't played AD&D since it was AD&D 2nd edition. So that's the last time I actually played D&D. I played mostly Theater of the Mind. Didn't use miniatures back then. But nowadays, they're a bigger part of the game, and if your character can move 30 feet in a turn, you have a grid sometimes like a battle mat with your thing drawn on, or terrain, and you move your guy 6 spaces. Space is worth 5 feet. That's how things work. Conan doesn't use squares, it uses zones. Zones are places where there might be a lot of action, so you might have a well. The well might be a zone. Let's use a city square as an example. If in the city square your players come in and there's a fountain in the middle, and a merchant cart over here, and maybe a main hallway, entranceway over here, you might have 3 or 4 zones where the players can move in to maybe the fountain is one zone, and then they can move to the next zone over in one of their moves, which might be the merchant cart, that kind of thing. So it's pretty free form and pretty flowing, and those zones can change based on the size of the encounter area. So it's pretty loose concept, which I don't hate. I kind of like. It takes a little bit of thought to maybe figure out where your zones are going to be, but once you got them figured out and you have your head around the system, it works pretty good. So I'm going to talk about one of the major interesting mechanics in this system. They are called momentum and doom. Both of these things serve to build tension. Momentum is a mechanic that represents your players doing very well and things going well on their side and things working well for them, and that momentum building up as their heroic actions mount on each other, and they're finally killing guys with single blows, or they're cutting down multiple opponents with a single blow or whatever. Much like the ebb and flow of life, in sword and sorcery stories, things often go horribly awry for their heroes, and that's represented by doom. So they're kind of like karma, if you want to look at it that way. Heroes also have a stat called fortune. They get a limited number of those, 4 or 5, you burn them off, and then you might get them back at the start of your next session, and they allow you to get successes easier. Mechanical things you can do with doom and momentum. Momentum is typically the players, and doom is sort of the GM's equivalent. Things like swift actions, you can take another action in a round. You can get extra dice to roll. A GM can make something more difficult. that kind of thing. Some NPCs have special effects that you can use with Doom. So you can spend, GM can spend Doom to make them do special effects. And that's directly related to what the players have done during the adventure. So that's an interesting concept. When you first read it or first hear about it, you're like, the GM has a mechanic to screw with the players. Doesn't that make it an us versus them thing? And it doesn't, because the Doom mechanic is something the players can always see, so it helps build tension. As they need to succeed at things and they're using Doom to buy dice, they know that there's going to be a payback. They know that the things they're doing now will be paid back upon them later. And it's not the GM doing it per se, it's them doing it to themselves in terms of how the story mechanics work. So it's an interesting mechanic. I quite like it. It has a lot of interesting concepts and ideas behind it that can be pretty cool. Like many other games, you're in a round of combat, which is an indeterminate amount of time in Conan, just as zones aren't a particular size, rounds aren't a particular length either. You have 3 kinds of actions you can perform. You can perform free actions, such as speaking, moving within close range, or dropping an item. You can do a minor action, which is a pretty simple thing. You can trade your minor action for a free action. Why would you want to do that? Free actions are free. You can do as many as you want. Yes, you can only ever do one type of free action in a turn. So if your free action is to drop an item, you can only drop 1 item. So you can talk and drop an item, but you can't talk and drop 2 items. You can't talk twice, that kind of thing. But if you trade your standard action in, you can drop 2 things. Some things as standard actions, or minor actions, sorry, not standards, minor actions. We're talking about minor actions right now. Some things minor actions allow you to do would be drawing a sword, moving to an adjacent zone. Standard actions are your basic actions in the game. Your standard actions are things like skill tests, attacking guys, entering into contests against other people. So, now that we know that, skill tests, standard action. We talked about target numbers before. So your basic target number is going to be your ability score. So let's look at agility. So we'll put that up on the screen. Book. And so here we have part of a character sheet. We see our agility score is 11. And we see underneath it skills. And one of the skills is melee. So melee has an EXP of 2. And that's not experience, that's expertise. And this represents deeper knowledge of that kind of skill. Focus is also 2, and that represents an even deeper knowledge. And then TN is target number, which is the ability score plus expertise, and that's 13 in this case. So when I roll my d20, I need to roll 13 or less to get a success, or whatever your target number happens to be. If I'm rolling against acrobatics, we see here has no skill level in it, I'm rolling against 11. Okay. So this is, as you've gathered, maybe not, Modiphius' new role-playing system, 2D20 it's called. So it's not called D20, it's called 2D20. That means that players, when they roll for anything, when they roll for a skill or an attack, they get 2D20 to roll. Check your stat, see how many successes you get. If you get the number of successes or more, you succeed. Pretty simple. That's pretty much the core of the game. There is, of course, more to it than that, just because there's things you can't do by this what I've just told you. So we talked about fortune points. If I spend a fortune point, what does that give me? You said it gives me more successes. It does. Fortune gives you a 3rd dice. A 3rd dice that rolls always as a 1. This isn't D&D, so 1s are good. So you get 1, which means you can get, at this point in time, based on what I've told you, up to 3 successes by rolling 2 dice. Cool. Now I can beat difficulty 3 stuff. That's great. If you remember earlier, I said I went to difficulty 5. So we're still having problems getting up to 5. Another thing you can do is your team may have stored momentum, which we talked about earlier, momentum in general, in which case you can spend a momentum point to get extra dice. So now I can get one momentum point, gives me 1 extra dice. I can buy up to 3 extra dice. That includes fortune. So I can only ever roll 5d20. But rolling 5d20 means I can roll 5 successes. There we go. We can get to 5. That's pretty cool. Not necessarily easy though, right? I mean, it's 5. It's an epic skill challenge. It shouldn't be easy. However, it is a little bit easier than I've just led you to believe. We talked about the focus number being an even deeper knowledge. They're usually pretty low, like a 2 or a 3. So if you roll less than that focus number, you get 2 successes. So now if we think about that, if we spend a fortune point, and we're looking at our melee score before, which had a target number of 13, it had an ability score of 11, it had an expertise of 2, and a focus of 2. So now I spend my fortune point, I get a pre-rolled d20 at 1, automatically below that 2. That's automatically 2 successes. So now if I'm rolling 2 extra dice, I can roll, well, if I roll 1 and 2 for the 2 extra dice, I'm going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 successes. So this gives us an ability to, if we're skilled and have a really good focus in a particular skill, we can actually roll a lot higher than what you need. And rolling higher than what you need is what gains you momentum. So if I have a difficulty 1 skill challenge, which is what you normally have to attack things, and I roll 2d20, and I have a melee of 13 with a focus of 2, and I roll a 10 and a 1, I'm going to get 3 successes. I need 1 to succeed, the other 2 become momentum. So now I can use them right away, or I can put them in the doom pool, which means the other people in my party can use them to do the same things that I can do with them for the most part. Pretty cool. If you have no momentum and you want to buy dice, you can still do so. All you do is tell the DM, I always say DM, this isn't Dungeons and Dragons, you always tell the GM that you want to buy 1 die, 2 dice, 3 dice, whatever. He will then take, or she will take, 3 points of doom and put them where you can see them, so you know how much doom you have coming down over your heads, and you'll get those dice to roll. Let's talk about your friends helping you out. Let's talk about that. The other way to get more dice is if your friends help you. So the classic example of this is there's a giant rock in front of you. The GM says that rock's huge. It's going to take difficulty 5 to push that rock. Just straight brawn. No skills, just straight brawn. So the player looks at his sheet and he's like, my brawn's 10. Does anyone else have a higher brawn? They all say no. So he spends 3 points of momentum to give himself 5 dice. He's trying to roll 10, 50-50 shot on each die. They don't stack. The statistics don't stack, so he's not sure he's going to be able to do it. His other friends in his party can help. They can all contribute 1d20 based on their brawn scores. So if you have 3 other guys, you're going to go from 5, 6, 7, 8 dice. That's pretty cool. And it's the only time you can roll more than 5 dice when you're trying to do something, because a single player is not rolling more than 5 dice. He's rolling 5, and his buddies are all rolling 1 each. So they have a better chance of moving that rock. So there's a couple other things that can help get you more dice. Are kits and resources. Kits typically don't get you more dice. They typically just don't make it more difficult to do something. If picking a lock is difficulty, like it's a difficulty 1 lock, difficulty 2 lock, and you don't have lock picks, it usually goes to difficulty 3. If you have lock picks, it'll stay at difficulty 2. If you're trying to heal someone, same kind of thing. If it's a difficulty 1 or 2 test, we'll say difficulty 2 just for the just to say the same. If you don't have a medical bag, it'll be difficulty 3. If you do have a medical bag, difficulty 2. If you have medicine, which are consumable resources, you get extra dice for spending those points, essentially. So burn 2 pieces of medicine, get 2 dice. And the last thing that we need to talk about before we move it towards combat, which will be the 3rd episode, are struggles. These are when 2 players or a player and an NPC are placed directly in opposition of each other. So these are things like if someone's trying to sneak up on someone else and he's a guard and he's watching, then maybe that's a direct opposition. If they're having a race, direct opposition. If they're having an arm wrestling contest, they're in direct opposition of each other. You can't just have one guy roll his brawn test and be like, I succeeded, I win the arm wrestling contest. No. So how does it work? Each player or NPC will determine how many dice they want to roll prior to the other guy making his roll. So if you're strong and they're not quite so strong, you might want to roll less dice just because it's going to cost you. You guys will both make your skill tests. If both people fail their skill test, then nothing happens, you both lose. If one guy fails his skill test, he loses, the other guy wins. If both pass their skill test, we go to the next phase of these struggles. If you both pass your skill test, whoever generates the most momentum wins. Makes sense? So if our difficulty is 1 on this challenge, and guy on the right happens to roll 2 successes, that gives him 1 point of momentum. If the guy on this side rolls 1 point, 1 success gets 0 momentum, 1 momentum wins, all good. If the guy on this side rolls 3 successes, that's right, 3 successes, gains 2 momentum. The guy on this side rolls 2 successes, gains 1 momentum. These first 2 cancel each other out, leaving 1 momentum. This guy wins, but doesn't get all his momentum, he only gets what's remaining. So he'll gain 1 point of momentum to go into the pool, or for him to use for actions or extra damage or whatever he wants. And that's pretty much how struggles work. Ties always go to the player character. That's pretty much the game system in a nutshell. You know, we haven't talked about combat, weapons, armor, that kind of thing yet. But in terms of how a player does things, he wants to make a jump over a chasm. We know that we would look at the character sheet and be like, maybe we will use acrobatics for that. That's a good one. Or athletics maybe. Depends what you want to do. If it's just a straight up jump, maybe you want to use athletics. That's a brawn test. Acrobatics is agility. You can use that too, depending. You might even be a nice GM and be like, which one's higher, and use that one. They roll their dice to see if they succeed. And if it's a really long jump, that's going to be a difficulty 2 test. If it's a long jump and it's dark out, maybe a difficulty 3 test. That's up to you how difficult you want it to be. Number of difficulty levels are a lot less granular than what you would see in like Dungeons and Dragons. There's no like DC 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 23, blah, blah, blah. 0 to 5. That being said, I have toyed with the idea of also giving players effects that lower their target numbers, make them harder, lower their target numbers, make them harder to hit, harder to succeed, not hit. So, lots of ways you can manipulate the system to make things more difficult, easier, harder, whatever. And again, that's all I have for this episode, episode 2 of the Conan 2D20 RPG series. The next episode is going to talk about combat and how we die, kill things, take damage, give damage, how we can parry, react, that kind of thing. So stay tuned. If you like this and want to see episode 3 as well, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you liked the video, please push like. If you have any comments on what you think of the Roll Under system, if you want to make the comment that, you know, this is just another system because it needs to be different than Dungeons and Dragons, you know, let me know below. We can have a discussion about it. I don't care. Like I said, the quick start rules are on Drive-Thru RPG, and I left the link to that on my first video. So have a look at it, see what you think. We haven't gone over combat, like I said. We haven't gone over magic. I probably will in the end, but it's a lot different, so I haven't really got my head completely around it yet, but I'll probably do a video, honestly, just to get my head wrapped around it a little bit better. Because it's a little bit more complicated. Complicated might not be the right word. It's just a lot different than traditional Dungeons and Dragons, fireballs, and things like that. So, anyways, that's all I have today. I'm off to get my medieval on this weekend. We got a SCA event here, so I'm going to go hang out there. Drink some more lovely beer. I got some Shot Top for that, which is also a tasty wheat ale if you like those kinds of things. So, to Crom.